run with the shot on the goal!
Big goal for Ferris State, making it a 3-1 game.
Great job by the Bulldogs to find a way to get it done.
Some people don't like it, but that's just how I am.
College sports is shifting. It's all about game experience.
I can't think of better people to be spending my time with.
We raise a family here, and it's something that's not seen in a lot of other schools.
You're listening to Behind the Bulldogs, brought to you by Ferris State Athletics.
This is Behind the Bulldogs, our Super Summer Sports Series Spectacular. Yes, that was a mouthful, but we are back at it. Joe Nagy joining us as always.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome back, Joe.
It's good to be back. It's only been a week, but we're here.
I know, it feels like more than that, but we got a third microphone here at the table today. We got a crossover this summer, and it's with our good friend over at Off the Ice. Brody Keiser is joining us. Welcome, Brody.
Hello, everyone.
Whoa.
It was a mouthful, you said, but you nailed it. First try, by the way.
First try, yes. No retakes. But what we are doing this summer, as we kind of alluded to on our last episode last week here on Behind the Bulldogs, if you missed out, you can check the feed below. We're going into a full in-depth recap and preview of each sport individually over the summer. So we'll be talking about each individual sport, basketball, football, cross country. We'll get into all of it, and we'll go one sport each per episode, and we will get you to the fall quick, fast, before you know it. And it should be a really fun ride, fellas.
Yeah, it should be a perfect situation because I think there's enough weeks in the summer where it's a sport a week.
We did the math, and we might have to combo men's and women's for some of the sports, maybe a week or so. But I think we should have enough.
But it's all good. We got enough time allotted, so let's get after it.
Yeah, let's get after it. So we are starting with drumroll, please. Well, I guess it's already spoiled since you saw the title of this. We're going to talk softball today, but especially for this team this year. Most wins that we've had in, I believe, 5 or 6 seasons with this group, and Coach Schumann's team especially. You saw really the grittiness of this team, and especially the offense really came to life. Really in the postseason, just ran into 2 of the best teams in our region, you could even say, even though not in the top 10 rankings with Grand Valley State and Purdue Northwest, 2 really talented teams at the end of the season. But I think you saw this group and their potential. The ceiling, I think we could all agree, fellas, super high for this group, but this is a freshman and sophomore heavy group. So a lot of years of experience still to be had, and they're playing against teams in their 3rd, 4th, 5th, and even 6th seasons for a lot of these teams.
You can go ahead, Brody.
Yeah, I mean, it's an extremely young team, but when you have a young team like the Bulldogs, you want to see a ton of promise. And as you kind of alluded to, Brandon, that's exactly what Coach Schumann has. Not only did he have a very strong season in terms of what the Bulldogs have been able to do over the past 5 or 6 seasons this year, but he really did it on the backs of players like Alexis Kozlowski, who I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about later on. But some serious standouts as freshmen and sophomores. So definitely a lot of potential in the upcoming years. And it should be a really fun team to continue to watch. They're aggressive, not only at the plate, but also on the base paths. Once they can really put it all together and establish that consistency from the start of the season till the very end, they're going to be a dangerous team, not only in the GLIAC, but possibly in the nation as well.
You know, especially this upcoming year, you're going to see a lot more of coaches' recruits come in, which is going to be a huge thing. But also, I mean, you kind of talked about it a little bit, Brandon, but especially seeing a lot of these regionally ranked opponents. I think there's 4 of them that are in the GLIAC, like Purdue Northwest, Saginaw Valley, Grand Valley State, and then I think 1 more might be in there, but I might be mistaken. I think it's like Northwood, but obviously not in the GLIAC anymore. But still, you see the success that we've had against good regional opponents, a lot better than what we had last year. That's the big thing about it, especially those first couple games against Grand Valley, being able to sneak a few and being able to just kind of have both ends of the spectrum, being able to grit out those 1 to 2 run wins where you're not going to get the bats going, but defense has to step up. That's what we saw. And then we also saw earlier on in the year, and especially as time went on, those big time games where we got a lot of runs off. I mean, we beat Thomas More, I think 12-0 earlier on. We get those games where we're averaging 8, 9 apiece for like those 4 series stretches. So I'm really loving where we're at. Especially with the new recruits coming in, it's going to be a lot of Coach Schumann's girls that are going to be donning the Bulldog jersey, which is going to be sick. But especially seeing how well we did against those teams where a lot of people counted us out already, I think that's just very promising to see.
Yeah, I think especially with his team, obviously you're going to look at the stat sheet, you're going to see 25 and 27, and you're going to be, oh man, they weren't 500 this year. But I think you look at where a lot of this team really flourished was things outside of the stat sheet, because obviously we can look at stats all day, like seeing a lot of these numbers and really kind of making judgment. And a lot of people do this, and that's ourselves included too. Sometimes we look at numbers as much and even more than the games itself. But I mean, for a team really that, I mean, batting wise, Inconsistencies definitely were apparent this year. I mean, with especially a lot of young arms as well on the pitching mound, you kind of saw really overall the inconsistency was really all this team was missing from being a really good club. I mean, you look at the batting average, 270 on the season. Certainly not a bad margin, 345 on base, 367 slugging. Those are not bad numbers at all at the plate. 101 stolen bases. That was one that certainly stood out this year, reaching the triple digits. And Coach Schumann mentioned that in his philosophy of playing this game, really kind of taking over this program. What he wanted to implement was, we're going to manufacture runs as much as we can. And if that means we're going to have to steal on the base pads, that's certainly what it's going to be at the end of the day. And I mean, we saw a lot of these freshmen, especially a lot of really fast players. I mean, Emma Giller led the team as a freshman with 21 stolen bases. Jaden Joseph, Abby Meyer with 16, 13 respectively. Maddie Gakis, Ellie McDonald, both with double digits. So if they get on base, and really that was the only thing that set apart was just making sure we could get on base, and then getting around the base paths certainly kind of took care of itself.
Yeah, I think that aggression was a big reason why Coach Schumann and the Bulldogs had as much success as they did this year, specifically in some of the games that Brandon, you and I were able to call here at home. Time and time again in some low-scoring affairs, the Bulldogs late in games were able to get on base, whether it was via a walk or a base hit out to the outfield, and then they stole that second base, bring up their power hitters, and drive in a run. We saw Alexis Kozlowski win a game that way after Bulldogs were aggressive on the base pass. She doubled out into left center field. And when you have a team that's willing to put that much pressure on the opposition on the base paths, it's so difficult to defend, and it's so much more for a pitcher to have to think about instead of just the batter in front of them. And it really does put a lot of pressure on opposing defenses. And I think that Coach Schumann's mentality there and his philosophy was really a big part of the reason why the Bulldogs down the stretch of the season were pushing to be potential GLIAC champions.
Yeah, 95 for 101 when it comes to stolen base attempts, which is
outlandish.
Pretty darn good, especially when you see the national average. But still, I think too, just the philosophy that this team has been able to adopt and kind of change from before, that they're just going to grit out the wins, is going to be the reason why I think you're going to see this team probably get maybe 10, 15 games above 500 next year, because they're going to be a team that has just new faces coming in, and especially coming into a conference that's still going to be very competitive, but now to kind of see a new team that's going to be maybe taking over the reins. I wouldn't say, first or second in the conference, but still being able to give Saginaw Valley and GV a little bit more of a run for their money. I think you're going to see a lot closer of a finish when it comes to the regular season GLIAC standings as well as the tournament as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of looking into some more stats here, I think especially like we mentioned on the mound, team as far as has a lot of potential. I mean, we saw Erin Gallagher really have a standout senior season. She was spectacular, and she's had a great career as a Bulldog. Certainly, you look at it, the freshman kind of got, the first taste of college softball, and sometimes it can be a little bit of a rough patch first step. But I think especially when you looked at this team, they battled in a lot of these games. And I mean, especially down the line in GLIACs, winning a lot of these tight games. I mean, we won a couple against Grand Valley, which were one-run games. I mean, you're talking especially against Purdue Northwest, that game, Brody, that we called, that was a 1-0 win. That's all it takes sometimes. It's just one run. Well, if only the Tigers knew how to hit like we would.
Yeah, right.
But it's really tough for, a lot of these new arms to really go into the perspective of college softball, because it really is a different game. I mean, it's the same dimension on the diamond. It's still a lot of the same exact process of pitching. But, I mean, you're going up against pretty much, you could even argue, like 3, 4, 5 in a high school lineup, that's 1 through 9, or if not better. So it's a really different perspective, but I think this group especially really has a really bright future. And I think especially one thing to note too, I mean, missing Catherine O'Donohue was a big blow for that rotation, because she really provides a spark, as well as at the plate too, because she can really swing the bat as well. But I mean, you saw especially Riley Heise, Isabella Regner, Ashley Webb, all getting some really quality starts. So I think that experience is going to help them in a tremendous way. Again, Coach Sharon Schumann, of course, has been working with them. So you don't see the ERA is obviously going to be a little bit skewed when you look at these numbers, like a 3.65 ERA. That doesn't look good, and the whip is 1.47. But at times, I mean, we were seeing sub 2.0 ERAs, sub 1 whip, but it's just the consistency that they have to work on.
Yeah. Oh, sorry to cut you off, Brody. But if you go back to the record too, you're looking at it like this team was not you might see a lot of losses in the column, but if you look at it, I think only 10 were of 5 runs or more, 3 runs or more out of everything. And especially, you know, a lot of those came at the start of the season where you're going down against teams that have been practicing outside for most of the time. Only 3 of those came after the second part of the season. Every other game has been a 2-run game or a 1-run game, which is just one swing of the bat that could change the whole thing. So it's just one little thing that could have changed, that could have drastically changed the regular season. And I think too, if you look at that and if you just kind of look beyond what the record says, this team has a lot of promise. And especially like you were saying with the pitching, yeah, there were some blemishes there, but I think too, you're going to see this team really just prosper a lot when it comes to kind of turn this thing around for next season.
There was a stretch at the start of April, too, where the Bulldogs won 6 of the first 7 games in that month. And they did it in different ways, kind of as you talked about earlier, Brandon, winning some of those high-scoring games. And then Joe was saying that they can win the low-scoring ones, too. 1-0 and then a 4-2 victory. But then they put up 12 runs, 7 runs, 10 runs, 7 runs to start out the month of April, winning 6 of 7. And that was really when Coach Schumann had talked about that the Bulldogs kind of controlled their own fate the rest of the season in terms of their positioning in the GLIAC and advancing to the postseason. So those are the types of stretches that this team is capable of, and winning those low-scoring games, but then also being able to manufacture some of those runs later on. I really think it just shows you that this team is deep and has talent at every level. As soon as they can get more consistent on a day in and day out basis, this team's going to be very, very dangerous.
Absolutely. Looking at some all-conference honorees, all GLIAC first team, Alexis Kozlowski, Aaron Gallagher, both getting tabbed as first team honorees. Emily Killian awarded the second team in her second season behind the plate. So congrats to Emily, as well as Jaden Joseph and Emma Gillard, the middle infield combo, both getting honorable mention all GLIAC this year. So those are just 5 of the individuals. And obviously we have a little bit more to talk about with Alexis Kozlowski, as we have just heard just a little while ago from a release. I believe this was as of yesterday, actually, as we're recording this on Thursday.
Breaking news.
National finalist for Freshman of the Year. How about that?
That's crazy.
Just crazy. She also got all regional honors as well. And I think that just goes to show, I mean, her in the middle of that lineup, you could just tell, especially watching these games, teams were seeing Alexis come up to the plate and they were making changes. You could see a lot of these defensive shifts because, I mean, when you have somebody in their first season batting .361, over a .600 slugging, I mean, that is something especially to know. I mean, isn't that crazy? We're talking about these.
Wild.
That's a freshman.
169 at bats too, which is insane. It's not like she had, you know, she was kind of getting it. She was a gamer every time, and especially going into that 361 is wild to think about. Seeing that, if you look at this like at an MLB standpoint or college standpoint, you know, you rarely get that in baseball and softball where people finish over a 400 average. That's almost unheard of. I think we were talking about it before there's one person from Evansville or UIndy that had like a 500 average or something like that.
Over 500 on the year.
Which is also unheard of. But still, 361 for Alexis is just, the sky's the limit at this point. Obviously, people are going to be saying, you know, sophomore slump might be coming. Who knows? But I think especially being able to see this much success already, and especially a conference that I don't think is going to see much change when it comes to pitching talent, you could see a back-to-back type thing from Alexis. But especially we hope that she can get that finalist award, because that'll be pretty sick.
361 doesn't really tell you the full story of what she was able to do as a freshman either. You know, that's an incredibly impressive average. It's more the 651 slugging with 19 doubles, 6 triples, and 6 home runs. She also drove in 48 runs. So it wasn't like she was just hitting for a ton of contact.
How many of those home runs were at our field?
That's a good question, actually.
Got to be quite a few.
We can try to
say, because that's power. Yeah, it's the biggest field in D2. So.
Yeah. But she was so well-rounded. You know, it wasn't like she was just poking bloopers out to left center field all season long and batting .361. She was crushing the softball all year long. She was consistent from the start of the season till the very end, just a dominant force in the middle of that lineup. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to the batters that played in front of her. Jaden Joseph was a big part of that, being on base a ton as well, right at the top of that lineup, 391 on base. Players like Emma Gillard, as you mentioned, Brandon, for her recognition, also great in the field, but good getting on base as well. That really helps players like Kozlowski, because when runners are on base, first base is scoring position when Kozlowski steps to the plate.
Yeah, it's really a full team effort to see where Alexis's stats really came into play. And that's not taking anything from Alexis. That season was phenomenal, and it will go down in the record books for Ferris State softball for sure. And it's exciting to see. And I believe she also is number 2 all time in the single season record chart for RBIs in a season as well, with her 48. And that's in her first season. So career yeah, we might be wanting to start checking that number down here a couple years down the road. But the Gaylord product has been great in a Bulldog uniform, and she's done great. But I mean, especially you look at a lot of these really good hitters at the top of the lineup as well. Emma Gillard, 324, batting as well behind Kozlowski. Emily Killian, 293 on the season. Abby Meyer, 283. Jaden Joseph, 278. The on base, though, I think is certainly something to note. Jaden Joseph, especially as well, 391 on base percentage, 400 over 400, I should say, for both Gillard and Kozlowski. So those are really, really good marks. Ella McDonald as well at the top of the lineup, 238 hitting, but 339 on base percentage at the top of the lineup, just getting on base. And that's certainly something to note of as well. So you're seeing especially those kind of numbers. And I think especially when you look, especially at some of the upperclassmen as well, that kind of had, we don't want to call it a down season, but from what we had seen them over their careers so far, a little bit lower numbers like Maddie Gakis at 265, Brooklyn Verbeek at 235. I mean, these are really two great defensive players that have really good promise in the bat, and we've seen it. Just a little bit of down season. So you add those two to the mix with that experience. I mean, this team, it's just trending upward. You can insert the Stonks meme of just everything going upward for this team right now.
Yeah, onward and upward for sure. And then also you have Catherine O'Donohue too, who is killing it as well, 310 and a 500 slugging. But still, you see a very solid mix of players who are going to be younger, especially you also have another group that's coming in. But I think it's going to be a perfect mix next year where you're going to see a lot of players even get better. I mean, Kozlowski's looks like it's just going to be trending upward. And I think, too, you're going to see a lot more just confidence as well from these freshmen that already had such a great year. And that's just a big thing about it, because confidence does wonders in the game of softball. Because if you go up to it where you're just a little bit hesitant, you might be in a slump or something like that. If you go up with confidence, you're going to be able to get on base every time.
Something else I think that's pretty important for this team to know is, speaking about the experience that the freshmen were able to get, Joe, a lot of times when you have such a young team like the Bulldogs had this past season, you don't really expect to be that competitive, or if you're not that competitive, you're kind of just focused on the fact that your young players are playing in a ton of games and they've got the next 2 or 3 years to really take the program to the next level. No, the Bulldogs got all this experience and they were competitive all throughout the season. There was a bit of a slump at the start of the season, as Joe was talking about, playing outside for the first time down in Florida, I believe it was, or Tennessee, wherever they were playing. But towards the rest of the year, this Bulldog team, there was never a stretch where they went on a big losing streak or a skid, really. They were competitive throughout the season while these freshmen and sophomores were playing almost every single day in the lineup. So they've got a ton of experience and they've got winning experience, which is a big time thing moving forward for the squad.
Absolutely. And Coach
Great
Schumann,
point, Brody.
Yeah, that's a great
thanks,
point.
Man.
Hey,
great job, dude.
Thumbs up all the way around, fellas. Especially to note, too, for Coach Schumann, because you've seen kind of the transition from when we saw originally Coach Janes now to Coach Schumann. And Coach Schumann has really attacked the transfer portal. A lot of these community college standouts, and especially you look at what he's really building around that experience, too, to also bring in a lot of these young, talented freshmen and being able to really complement them with experienced players that have played at the college level, now moving up a level. And you've seen a couple of the recruits, Paige Ancliffe one, certainly to note of as well. Beale City product was really, really talented player there. Also at Lansing Community College was, I believe, an all MCCAA, insert the whole acronym there, conference first teamer at that level as well. I believe was on the all tournament team for a couple of tournaments they had this season in the national tournament. So you bring a lot of that experience as well coming in this next year. And I think especially in this team, I think you start to see that consistency on the mound, really, I think defensively with this team, because defensively this team certainly has some things to improve of. I think that might be one of the number one things that we would probably note for this team. What do they need to do better next year? Probably in the field. That's probably the number one thing that they need to improve of, because you saw, especially there was a couple times during the season where it was just really these just really bad predicaments. One error leads to 2 runs. And that's just the things that you can't have at the college level to pick up wins against such good teams, right? And I looked it up here as we were continuing on that conversation, and we were at a 9.47 fielding percentage. That was last amongst the registered teams in the GLIAC. So that's something we have to improve on going into next year. Limit those errors. 76 that we had this year, 76. The fact that we're winning all these games with those errors really speaks to this team's resiliency. So you clean those things up, much more smooth sailing ahead.
Yeah. Love to see it. I thought you were going to go say something.
No, go ahead.
No, you go
We're
ahead,
still
bro.
working on the chemistry here, folks.
A little bit. Dude, love having Brody here. Love having him here. You can go ahead, Brody.
So defensively, that is a really good point, Brandon. And I think that a lot of that can be attributed to just the youth that you have. There's going to be growing pains when you're playing a lot of young players in the field. And it is impressive, really, that they were able to win as many games as they did, having the worst defensive fielding percentage in the entire GLIAC. But I also think that shows you that there's room still, not only for growth in terms of the players developing and getting older, but also there's a specific thing that the team did not do very well this year that they can work on. An easy thing to work on, too. You just hammer that home, you drill it like crazy in the offseason and have the players build some confidence in the field. You take that next step, and then as the players continue their natural development through the program, it just means that the ceiling is the limit. And we've said that a few times, but I really do believe that.
The ceiling is the roof. If you remember from Michael Jordan.
Did you just insert a Michael Jordan quote on a softball show?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I love you, Joe. Oh, my goodness. But I guess here to finish it out, why don't we go around? We'll pick one player that you think is going to be a standout name to watch for this Bulldog group next year.
Okay.
What you got, Joe?
Oh, I'm starting off? Okay.
If you'd like to.
Yeah, dude.
All right, go for it.
Lights aren't too bright for me.
Okay.
I got to say Catherine O'Donohue. I think she had a really great season, especially, I alluded to it already. She hit 310, 333 on base percentage, 500 slugging. And especially, she didn't have the greatest when it came to like runs batted in with 13, but still with her being able to get the amount of at-bats she did with, 84 and being able to do that well, I think you're going to see a lot more improvement from her going into this next season. And she's going to be a junior. She's going to be a leader on the team. She's going to have that much more confidence going into it. And you're also going to see great improvement from other players, but I think she's going to be one to watch out for just for a surprise. Yeah,
and especially the fact she put up those numbers before her injury. I think that's something especially to note, because I think when she's fully healthy, she can continue those numbers. And you're talking more runs batted in. You're talking better pitching consistency. And that's certainly, so that's a good one there, Joe. Brody, you got one?
Yeah, I'm looking at Keelan Wheaton. She batted 179 this year, so a little bit of a slower start to her career. Freshman outfielder for the Bulldogs. But Brandon, you and I were calling, I believe it was the Purdue Northwest series, where she had 4 plate appearances and she hit the ball as hard as anyone had that entire day in all 4 plate appearances. And the defense either made unbelievable catches on it or she hit it right at somebody. So I really liked her ability to barrel the ball up. I think she's got good control of the bat at the plate. She's also a good fielder and she's fast. That's exactly what this team needs and what Coach Schumann loves to have on the base pass. So I think Keelan Wheaton could be in for a big sophomore season. And if not next year, 2 years down the road, she could be one of the star players on this team.
All right. So those are 2 good picks. I will probably follow up here. I'm also going to go with a freshman outfielder playing center field. I will be Ella McDonald. She batted 238 this year, mentioned the 339 on base. Obviously the slugging 257, but for her position at the top of the lineup, especially being a really fast player, put the ball in play, get on base. That was her job and she did it very well. I think you're going to see that average go up. I think you're going to see a lot more of that power implemented in the offseason. I think that really would just have a really big impact on her game. We saw really good fielding from her as well. So I think her in the field definitely is an asset for her in center field as well, with her speed to be able to cover a lot of ground as well. As I'm looking up the official fielding percentage, I believe it was above 970. She had 981 officially on the season. So she was a really good fielder. Not too many errors in center field, and you saw quite a few putouts at 48. I think that she has a really good promise for this group. And I think especially with a year under her belt, be able to get to the offseason, get into the weight room, I think that is certainly going to help the power, and it's certainly going to bring her a lot of success moving forward. So.
I think it's a really good question trying to predict who's going to be the next breakout, because you can look up and down this lineup and you can almost just pick everyone, because there's a reason for each one of these players to potentially be a breakout. They've got that kind of talent.
Right. And they're only losing really one player, key player with Aaron Gallagher. Obviously, we had a couple really influential managers this past year that have really made an impact. But outside of Aaron, which she had a phenomenal career. She deserves a round of applause for the numbers she put up this year.
Absolutely.
But you look at this entire group and it's like, I don't think every team in the GLIAC can look top, bottom of the lineup and say, oh yeah, they're all coming back and they have really a lot of improvement ahead of them. And that's that's a blessing for this group going in next year.
Yeah. I can't really say much more, to be honest with you. You guys are
hit the nail.
You guys were going back and forth. You guys were on fire. I didn't want to,
on the head. So that's going to do it for us here on the first collab crossover series here with Behind the Bulldogs and Off the Ice. Softball in the books, fellas.
Yeah, great job, guys.
Look at that.
What an episode.
What a great episode. Big
First
thanks
of many.
to Dezos Digital, finding solutions in the digital world, for sponsoring this show. And we look forward to seeing you guys back here next week with an undisclosed sport that you'll just have to wait and see which one it is.
To be honest, we don't even know yet, so.
That is also true. But we'll get to it later. We're planning this out. Don't you guys worry. But until next time,
Take care, everybody.